Have you ever carried something so heavy that it seemed impossible to move forward? Something that makes you question if you even deserve to exist? Aguni knows this weight like no one else. He killed his best friend, carried guilt, sought punishment, and yet continued fighting. It seems contradictory, does it not? But it is precisely in this contradiction that he finds his strength. And what if I told you that the very same pain that almost destroyed him was the key to his redemption? In Borderland, the rules of the world we know do not exist. But Aguni teaches us something universal. Guilt can be transformed, sacrifice can be felt as a lesson, and even the most irreversible mistakes can lead us to a form of forgiveness. And if you think that is impossible in real life, think again. His story will show you how facing your own ghosts can be more powerful than any victory. Prepare yourself to dive into Aguni's mind, to understand how guilt can be fuel, how sacrifice can be a lesson, and how redemption can be born at the most unexpected moment. If you are a fan of cinema, psychology, and want to understand the mind behind your favorite character, subscribe to the channel now so you do not miss any video. Where in the world are you watching this video from? Leave your answer in the comments. Has always been the type of man who carries the weight of the world on his shoulders without complaining. A soldier at heart, even outside the battlefield, in Borderland, he becomes something between a protector and an executor, someone who understands that the line between life and death can be as thin as a breath. But the most curious thing is that behind all his brutality, there is an almost sacred calm, as if he made peace with pain a long time ago. And perhaps that is exactly what makes him so dangerous and so human. Unlike others, Aguni does not play to survive. He plays because he feels that he has already died inside, a long time ago. He is the type of person who, even while breathing, always seems to be in an internal war zone, where the enemy is himself. There is a loneliness in his gaze that does not come from the lack of company, but from the lack of purpose. It is the silence of someone who has seen too much, lost too much, and no longer knows if there is anything worth protecting. Before the chaos, Aguni was a soldier, disciplined, loyal, molded to obey and fight. But in Borderland, that loyalty turns into an open wound. Because when there are no more orders, no country, no flag, what is left of a soldier? He tries to fill this void by assuming the role of beach guardian, but deep down, he knows he is only hiding behind an invisible uniform, trying to keep alive an honor that no longer makes sense in that distorted world. However, what makes him a fascinating character is the contrast between strength and fragility. Aguni is like a cracked wall, imposing on the outside, but about to collapse on the inside. And perhaps that is why so many people connect with him, because we all have a little of that duality. We show strength to the world while hiding the cracks that time left. He just lives it on an extreme scale. The interesting thing is that Aguni does not seek redemption right away. He is not the type of character who questions the why of things, he simply acts. And this is his way of fleeing from himself. After all, it is easier to face monsters outside than to confront your own mirror. Deep down, he knows there is something within himself that needs to be forgiven, but he does not even know where to start. His relationship with Hatter, for example, is one of the most complex in the series. They are complementary opposites, the idealist and the realist, the dreamer and the soldier. Hatter believed in the utopia of freedom, Aguni in the brutality of survival. But behind this contrast, there was something stronger, a deep, almost fraternal friendship. And when the line between reason and madness was crossed, this friendship turned into tragedy. Aguni represents the archetype of the wounded warrior, someone who fights not because he wants to win, but because he no longer knows how to live in peace. He is the mirror of so many people who have learned to be too strong to the point of no longer knowing how to be vulnerable. And this is where his tragic beauty lies. He is living proof that courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to continue even when everything inside you wants to stop. And it is precisely this conflict between strength and guilt that drives him throughout his journey. Every step he takes in Borderland seems to be a desperate attempt to find himself, or perhaps to punish himself. But the most interesting thing is that this journey does not start with redemption, it starts with pain. And pain is what leads him straight to the first major conflict of his story. Every soldier returns from war with something they did not bring in their luggage: silence, a heavy silence that seems to live inside the chest. Aguni carries this silence like an invisible scar. He has seen what no one should see, and it has shaped the way he feels the world. It is as if the battlefield never ended, it just changed scenery. Now, the enemy is not outside, it is inside him. The trauma of war is not only fear, it is the routine of surviving the unacceptable. Aguni learned to shut off his emotions to stay standing, and it comes at a high price. He no longer knows what it is to truly feel. He is the type of person who learned to smile without joy, to fight without anger, and to live without hope. And when he arrives in Borderland, this same defense mechanism keeps him alive, but makes him increasingly distant from himself. Being a leader on the beach was another battle. The responsibility of protecting people who often did not even want to be saved. The weight of making decisions that could cost lives. Aguni becomes Hatter's armed arm, but deep down he knew this put him in a cruel role, doing the dirty work so others could dream of freedom. And as much as he tried to convince himself it was necessary, every act of violence left another invisible mark. There is something very human in seeing Aguni trying to maintain control while everything collapses. He is the one who tries to be rational when the world goes mad. But when you try to be everyone's anchor who holds you when you sink, what happens when the soldier, the protector, the leader finally breaks? This is the point where trauma becomes identity, and pain stops being a memory to become a way of existing. Aguni's most devastating conflict begins when Hatter's idealism turns into tyranny. It is like watching a brother get lost and being unable to do anything. He tries to contain, to help, to protect. But there comes a moment when love and loyalty collide with reality, and when he is forced to kill Hatter, the trauma becomes definitive. It is not only mourning a friend, it is mourning a part of himself that died along with him. After this point, Aguni becomes a ghost. He walks, breathes, and fights, but does not live. He is the portrait of someone who blames themselves for a mistake that was, in fact, inevitable. And this guilt accompanies him like a constant shadow. Every time he raises a weapon, it seems he hears the echo of that moment. There is no possible peace for someone who believes they destroyed the only true bond they still had. But there is something curious. The trauma does not destroy him completely. It keeps him moving. It is as if guilt is the fuel that makes him continue, even without direction. Many people live like this outside fiction as well, trapped in silent self-punishment, believing they must suffer to repay something from the past. Aguni symbolizes exactly this, the search for redemption through pain. And it is at this point that the story begins to change direction. Because deep down, Aguni's pain is not an end. It is the beginning of a journey. He does not yet know it, but every step he takes brings him closer to a decisive moment. The one in which he chooses whether to continue destroying himself or to finally forgive himself. And this is where the next chapter of this story emerges. The feeling of guilt that defines and pursues him. The feeling of guilt is a prison without bars, and Aguni lives in it from the moment he pulled the trigger. He did not just kill a friend, he killed a part of himself. Every memory of Hatter is like a broken mirror, reflecting fragments of something he would like to forget, but cannot. And the cruelest part is that the more he tries to escape this past, the more it consumes him, because what hurts is not what happened, it is what could have been. The relationship between Aguni and Hatter was always built on trust and loyalty, but also on tension and difference. While Hatter dreamed, Aguni saw chaos, and it is in this contrast that tragedy is born. When idealism turns into madness and duty mixes with love, the result is devastating. Killing Hatter was an act of self-defense, but for Aguni, it was like betraying a sacred oath, and he never managed to forgive himself for it. This guilt transforms him. He begins to live as someone who believes he does not deserve his own life. Every battle he faces seems like a self-imposed punishment. He puts himself in danger, seeks peril, as if unconsciously looking for punishment. It is the kind of guilt many know, the one that makes you sabotage your own happiness, as if being happy were a form of disrespecting the past. Aguni is the embodiment of this in living flesh. The most curious thing is that, to outsiders, he seems only a hardened warrior. But inside, there is a man in constant mourning. He speaks little, but carries the world in his eyes. It is the expression of someone who has not slept in peace for a long time. And this invisible weight affects everything: his choices, his relationships, even the way he sees his own existence. It is as if he is trapped in an emotional loop with no escape. Aguni's guilt is not only moral, it is existential. He does not only ask, "Why did I kill?" but "Who am I now that I killed?" He no longer understands his own role in the world. Before, he was the soldier, the protector, the friend. Now he is the killer of the man he most respected. And this loss of identity is what destroys him inside. Because when you no longer know who you are, any path seems wrong. This type of guilt is also familiar to many people outside the screen. Sometimes not for taking a life, but for decisions that broke bonds, hurt people, or simply could not be undone. And just like Aguni, many try to compensate by living in sacrifice mode, helping others, putting themselves second, trying to pay an invisible debt. But the truth is that guilt is never erased with pain, only with forgiveness. And that he has not yet learned. The tragic beauty of Aguni's journey is that his guilt humanizes him. He is not the perfect hero, nor the repentant villain. He is just a man trying to find peace amid the wreckage. This humanity is what makes him so real. Because deep down, we have all had something we wished to change, something too heavy to carry. The difference is that he transforms this weight into purpose, even without realizing it. And it is precisely this guilt that leads him to make one of the most impactful decisions in his journey, offering himself as the witch in the Ten of Clubs game. A choice that does not come from strategy, but from the desperate need to punish himself and perhaps to finally find some form of redemption. But this moment is only the beginning of what is to come. The sacrifice. When Aguni decides to declare himself as the witch in the Ten of Clubs game, the gesture seems, at first glance, an act of bravery. But deep down, it is something darker, a confession of guilt. He does not just want to save others, he wants to be punished. It is the kind of choice born not from courage, but from exhaustion. Because there comes a point when carrying your own pain becomes unbearable and punishment seems like relief. The scene is symbolic. The fire around, the flames growing, and him there standing motionless, ready to accept a fate he believes he deserves. There is something deeply human about this, the need to find an end to one's own torment. It is as if he says, "If I suffer enough, maybe what I did will stop hurting." But the pain of guilt does not dissolve with suffering, it just changes form. At this moment, Aguni no longer sees a difference between dying and being forgiven. His mind associates death with release, and this shows how much guilt has eaten away inside him. He does not seek salvation, he seeks rest. How many people, even outside Borderland, have only wished to stop fighting for a moment? It is the same impulse, the desire to be freed from the weight of a past that seems indelible. The most intriguing thing is that he does not lie. He really believes he deserves to burn. This is the power of emotional self-sabotage. You spend so much time punishing yourself mentally that you begin to think punishment is the only possible path. And when the group hesitates to burn him, Aguni's gaze says it all. He is not asking for mercy, he is asking for permission to cease existing. It is devastating and, at the same time, incredibly human. But there is also a paradox in this. Even consumed by guilt, Aguni still acts moved by compassion. He wants to spare others from pain to prevent anyone else from bleeding because of his mistakes. And this reveals something beautiful. Even at the height of self-destruction, he still thinks about protecting. He is the soldier who, even wounded, still tries to hold the shield for someone. It is the reflection of a heart that, although broken, still beats with empathy. The Ten of Clubs game then becomes a mirror of his internal state. The fire of the field is the same fire burning within him. The fire of guilt, of remorse, of the need for atonement. And perhaps that is why this scene is so remarkable. Because it is not just a survival test, but a ritual of confession. Aguni does not want to win the game. He wants to be purified by it. But something curious happens when he does not die. The world does not punish him. Death does not come. And he is forced to face an even harder truth. Survival is the true punishment. Because living with guilt is much more challenging than dying for it. It is at this point that he begins, even unknowingly, to take the first step toward redemption. Not through punishment, but through acceptance. And this step leads him straight to his last and most intense confrontation, the hunt for the King of Spades, a duel that is not only physical, but spiritual, where every blow, every wound, and every decision becomes part of a silent ritual of forgiveness. The moment when the wounded soldier fights again, but this time not to die and to finally free himself. The journey toward redemption, the hunt for the King of Spades, is not just a battle. It is the climax of a soul at war with itself. Aguni does not go into that confrontation merely out of duty, but out of necessity. It is as if, by facing that almost invincible enemy, he is finally looking into the eyes of all his ghosts. And for the first time, he does not try to run from them. He faces them head-on with the gaze of someone who no longer fears death. The King of Spades is the mirror of what Aguni fears becoming: ruthless, empty, without humanity. The difference between the two is thin, and that is what makes the fight so symbolic. Every blow Aguni delivers is a confession, every wound a memory. It is a battle where blood mixes with regret, and perhaps for this reason. The fight carries so much emotional weight because it is not about victory, it is about liberation. During the confrontation, Aguni fights as someone who has nothing to lose, but also as someone who carries the weight of all those who are gone. It is the fury of someone who has spent a lifetime trying to save others, but now understands that he must save himself too. It is a moment of brutal clarity. He realizes that fleeing from pain has never worked. The only possible path is to go through it. There is a silent beauty in the way he faces the enemy. There are no war cries, no heroic speeches, only determination and serenity. It is the gaze of someone who finally understands that life does not need to be a punishment, that forgiveness does not come from death, but from the courage to continue even when wounded. And that is exactly what he does. He continues until his last breath. Every blow exchanged between Aguni and the King of Spades carries the weight of all the choices he has made. It is as if, in that combat, he is cleansing the stains left by time. And when he finally defeats the enemy, there is no celebration. There is only silence, the same silence that has accompanied him from the beginning, but now different. It is a light silence of someone who, for a moment, has found peace. The battle is not only physical, it is spiritual. Aguni finally understands that killing Hatter was not an act of cruelty, but of mercy. He saved him from a madness that consumed him, and only now can he see this without destroying himself inside. This understanding is what frees him. The weight of guilt does not disappear, but it transforms into something more: wisdom. The pain, for the first time, stops being an enemy. And when he falls to the ground, wounded, there is an almost sacred serenity in his gaze. He no longer fears death, because in a way, he has already been reborn. Aguni dies as he lived, in silence, with dignity, but now at peace. His journey does not end in despair, it ends in redemption. He understands that forgiving himself is the only way to truly rest. The most powerful thing in this entire trajectory is that Aguni's redemption does not come from a miracle, nor from a grand gesture. It comes from accepting his own humanity. He learns, perhaps too late, that being human is to fail, to lose, to feel guilt, and still continue, and that is the message that remains, that even the most wounded hearts can find peace if they have the courage to look within. Aguni learns, painfully, that every choice has a price. There are no shortcuts or easy solutions in Borderland, and much less in life. Every decision he makes, whether to protect or punish himself, reflects what he carries inside. It is as if each step is a scale, weighing guilt and redemption and determining who he will be next. And this awareness makes every act of his intense, even silent. What is fascinating about Aguni is how guilt shapes his actions, but does not paralyze him. He continues to fight, to protect, to decide. Even carrying the weight of Hatter, even after sacrificing himself in the 10 of clubs, he does not let himself wither. He transforms pain into purpose, and this is something many people forget outside of fiction. Pain does not need to be only suffering. It can be fuel. At the same time, redemption emerges as a silent force. Every act he performs to repair the past is also an act of self-awareness. He learns that forgiving himself does not mean forgetting, but recognizing and accepting. This balance between guilt and redemption becomes the essence of who he is, and it is this complexity that makes him so real and relatable to viewers. It is impressive to see how Aguni handles responsibility. He does not shy away from difficult decisions, even knowing they may be costly. Every choice is made with the awareness of what is at stake, and every action carries a dose of humanity. He shows that being strong is not being free from flaws, but knowing how to coexist with them and still move forward. An example of resilience that few characters can convey so genuinely. the lost friendship, the sacrifice, the battle against the King of Spades. All of this accumulates within him like layers of experience, and it is exactly this that shapes his future decisions. He does not act impulsively. Every movement is calculated not to eliminate enemies, but to protect those who can still be saved. Aguni becomes master of himself, not due to the absence of fear, but because he has learned to act despite it. The most human aspect of his journey is that he does not seek to be remembered as a hero. He does not want medals or recognition. His strength comes from silence, introspection, and awareness of his own weight. And it is this humility that creates empathy with the audience. We all, at some point, try to balance our mistakes with our actions, trying to be better even without guarantees of success. Guilt and redemption walk side by side, like shadow and light. Aguni shows that it is possible to carry the past without being defined by it. Every gesture, every unspoken word, every silent decision is a step in building who he becomes. And this connects us with him almost intimately because we have all felt the weight of decisions we cannot undo. And thus, Aguni teaches us something valuable, that being human is to accept one's own fragility, transform pain into purpose, and move forward. That life is made of choices, some wrong, some right, but all meaningful. And it is exactly this learning that leads him to the next chapter of his story, a chapter where his journey of pain and redemption finds new layers of meaning. Aguni's legacy is not measured by victories or achievements, but by how he transforms pain into example. Even in silence, he teaches others that courage is not the absence of fear, but continuing despite it. Every gesture, every sacrifice, is a silent reminder that true strength is born from vulnerability. And that is what makes him unforgettable to those who cross his path. He makes clear that being human is complex, full of flaws and regrets, but still capable of great acts. His story shows that redemption is possible, even for those who believe they do not deserve it. Aguni is proof that facing one's own guilt, confronting pain, and allowing oneself to continue is often the greatest act of heroism there is. His impact goes beyond actions on the battlefield. He influences behavior, inspires decisions, and even changes perspectives. Those who observe Aguni learn, without realizing it, that protecting is not just a matter of strength, but of empathy. That discipline and courage can walk side by side with forgiveness and understanding. He teaches by example, silently but memorably. The respect he earns does not come from fear but from admiration for what he represents, resilience, and humanity. He shows that someone can be strong, relentless when necessary, yet still preserve principles. And because of this, every character who crosses his path carries a bit of what Aguni represents, as if his legacy were a subtle light illuminating even the darkest moments. Furthermore, Aguni teaches us about the balance between duty and humanity. He is proof that leadership is not about commanding, but about understanding and bearing, about making difficult decisions and still maintaining integrity. Every sacrifice, every internal battle builds not just a soldier, but a living example of conscious courage. His story also provokes reflection. How many of us face silent internal battles, carrying guilt that prevents us from moving forward? Aguni shows that accepting one's own past and learning from it is true power. That often the greatest enemy is not outside, but inside ourselves, and that redemption is a journey, not a destination. In the end, Aguni leaves a legacy that the true measure of strength is not what you defeat, but what you protect and how you maintain integrity while facing pain. He is proof that humanity and courage can coexist even in the cruelest scenarios, and that even wounded, it is possible to continue to inspire and teach. And thus, Aguni's journey becomes a living lesson for all who watch, that every choice, every act of courage, every moment of reflection shapes who we are. That guilt can be transformed into learning, and even the most wounded hearts can leave lasting marks. And with that, his story connects directly to the next chapter of his journey, which is, in fact, the lesson that remains alive even after the end. Aguni's journey is, above all, a voyage into his own interior. Every battle, every sacrifice, and every decision were stages in a painful process of self-discovery. He shows us that redemption is not a sudden event, but a slow and intense construction. It is the weight of guilt transforming into learning and pain becoming silent strength. And it is in this process that he finds humanity. Throughout his journey, Aguni teaches that courage and guilt can coexist. That feeling responsible for mistakes is not weakness, but awareness. that confronting one's own past requires more bravery than any physical duel. He becomes an example that accepting one's own vulnerability is often the key to overcoming one's limits, and every action he takes is imbued with this lesson. The sacrifice in the Ten of Clubs is a crucial point of this synthesis. It shows us that taking responsibility, even unjust or painful, can be a path to understanding one's own essence. The self-sabotage that seemed like punishment transforms into self-awareness, and the act of putting oneself in danger reveals the depth of his moral consciousness. It is a gesture that resonates far beyond the game. The hunt for the King of Spades is the climax of this journey. There, Aguni confronts everything he has carried inside: guilt, loss, and the fear of being unworthy of forgiveness. And it is in this confrontation that redemption manifests silently, but definitively. He learns that facing the past and accepting who one is, even wounded, is more powerful than any physical victory. It is internalized redemption. Every step Aguni takes after these experiences is guided by a delicate balance between prudence and compassion. He is no longer just a soldier, but a man shaped by his choices, by the consequences he accepted, and by the sacrifices he made. Every act reflects a deep awareness of his own humanity. And it is this balance that makes his journey so inspiring. The legacy he leaves is silent but enduring. The courage to face his own guilt, the discipline to protect others, and the ability to learn from mistakes create a narrative that goes beyond action. It is a lesson on being human in its most complete form: fallible, strong, repentant, and capable of redemption. And this legacy echoes for all who cross his path. By connecting guilt, sacrifice, and redemption, Aguni shows us that true strength is not the absence of fear or failure, but the ability to continue despite them. His journey is a map of inner growth, an example of how traumas can be transformed into learning and purpose. He is proof that even in the chaos of Borderland, it is possible to find meaning and humanity. And thus, Aguni's story closes the cycle in a way that is not just about surviving, but about understanding. He transforms every wound into a lesson, every loss into reflection, and every act into example. His trajectory reminds us that redemption is not given, it is earned, and that even after the greatest pains, there is still room for light and hope. So, what did you think of Aguni's journey? Can you relate to the guilt he carried or the fight for redemption? Leave your opinion in the comments and tell me, which character do you want me to analyze in the next video? His story shows us that even in the darkest moments, there is room for learning and growth. That pain and guilt can be transformed into strength if you have the courage to face yourself. And this reflection does not stay only on the screen. It is something we can apply in our own lives. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Aguni's mind, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. This way you can continue following each analysis and discovering how complex characters can teach us about courage, humanity, and overcoming challenges. And remember, every choice, every mistake, and every challenge can be transformed into learning. Aguni's journey is living proof of this, and yours can be too.